So good morning to you. Well, actually, to you, it's the evening. So
Good morning. Um, do you have a big German audience supporters?
what was that?
Do you have a big audience in Germany?
Yeah, actually, for whatever reason, Germany is one of my best audiences. I've done workshops there, but it's been a long time. I was there in 2011 in Munster, and I gave a workshop. It was we could talk about that actually because it was kind of a phenomenal experience. And I met all these Germans when I was in India at an ashram, and neat things happened. So we could if that's part of it, if you want to go there, but we could talk military. I got my military hat on. I'm ready to roll.
Did you meet any Germans in Vietnam?
Actually, when I went back to Vietnam in 2002, there were some Germans from some nonprofit organizations that were building water treatment plants and working on a bridge. Was really funny. Well, we could talk about it in the interview, but the Russians were there, and the Russians were just taken. They weren't doing nothing. And then a bunch of other countries were coming in and investing, trying to make money. But the Germans and the Americans, everything was free. They were building hospitals, bridges, water treatment plants, no profit involved. But all these other countries, from Europe and from the South, even Australia, all of them were all trying to make a profit out of Vietnam. So that kind of struck me as really odd. It was like, Americans shed all the blood, and Americans come back and do all the charitable work, and everybody else comes in and just looking to get whatever they can get, right? Nature. That's how it goes.
The US and the coalition troops in Vietnam, they built schools, no?
Yeah, in fact, I went back there to check on a health clinic that one organization I was working with built, the Sharon Ann Lane Foundation. She was a nurse that was killed in Vietnam. And I met with the Communist Party there, and we sent them all these monies, and we sent them motorcycles, ambulances, TVs, all this stuff. Nothing was in the building. No patients, nothing. They kept asking for stuff. Oh, our doctor needs a motorcycle. Our doctor needs a TV for the waiting room. Our doctor needs this. And when you get there, it's all in private hands. They just ripped it all off. Anyway, that's another story. All right, if you're ready to roll, I'm ready to roll. Unless we're rolling now, there we are.
No, I mean, let's continue. Did you, the Americans and the coalition forces, they built 65 schools in Vietnam, no?
I don't know the number, but I would believe that. All I know, I was greatly disappointed in the Russians. When they went in, they were just looking for what they could get. And when I met a lot of Canadians, Americans, and some Australians, and a group of Germans, I was really surprised by that. There was a group of Germans over there doing all kinds of good public works. It wasn't focused on here's a new market we can sell to. It was these people were in need. Let's do this. And the guys I met they had spent a lot of money out of their own pocket, thousands of dollars developing water purification plants, for small villages, not big ones, but for, a little hamlet or something. So they didn't have the funds to build one for like a big city, but they had it for like a little, 30 people live here and, 100 people live here type thing. So, and is no small thing because fresh water, that's like gold. And it's going to become more valuable as time goes by, as we pollute more and we damage more of the earth and the environment. And in Vietnam, you have all those chemicals that were dropped there during the war, Agent Orange. It's contaminated a lot of the fresh water. So having treatment plants is huge. No small thing. It's big. It's life affirming. You need fresh, clean water. And we're going to find that all over the world, Africa and Asia and even parts of Russia where they've polluted really bad. So that's this next 30 years, people are going to realize how valuable water is. Very valuable. Anyway, good morning to you from California. Good afternoon to you there, or evening there. And
You have a name companion, another referent in Britain, William James Gilmore McDonald. He's a referent for the British Church.
yeah, I tell you what, the McDonald clan, because I'm Irish and Scot, so Scottish and Irish, and it's all the same, and about Irish and Scotland, once you get them talking, you can't shut them up. There's no shame. They don't get tired, and they just keep going. So
how did you grow up in the 50s in San Francisco?
Yeah. I was born in San Francisco in 1946, and it was right at the end of the war. Soldiers were coming back, and I lived in the Bay Area, and then 2 years lived in Oregon, and that's a state right above California. And then when I graduated high school, I moved to the Hawaiian Islands because that's what a young man does with a surfboard. You pack up your wax, your surfboard, and you go to Hawaii, of course, right? And then eventually I end up hitchhiking around Europe and meeting some wonderful people. I mean, very spiritual, neat people as I wandered around Europe. And that was in the 1965 when I was bumming around Europe. So a long time ago, then came back, hitchhiked across the United States and joined the Merchant Marine. And then I got drafted in the Army. So I didn't get a chance. So there you go.
Did you, was your father in the war?
Yeah, my father was in the South Pacific fighting the Japanese, and he was a sergeant, and he was on one of those landing crafts coming onto bad beach with explosions and everything. And he's got a nice, clean, neat uniform on. He's ready to fight the war. He's ready to be a hero. And he steps off the landing craft and gets part of his head, torn up from a shrapnel or bullet or something. And they caught him as he fell down. They put him back into the thing, took him back to the ship, and fixed him up. And that was his total experience of combat. Was like, follow me, and then that was it. So he had about 30 seconds of war, and then he dealt with his wounds. But he was a very gifted baseball player in the United States. And in high school, he played with Joe DiMaggio and the DiMaggio brothers and all these guys that went on to become big baseball stars. And he was on a team in San Francisco, and he was All-American, meaning across the whole United States, he was like one of the top players. And he was drafted by Boston, and but he ended up in a war. And so then when the war was over, of course, he passed his prime. He never got to play professional baseball. He was a catcher. So that's kind of like a little sad note there. So his career was cut short.
What made you then decide to go to war? And I can imagine that you experienced the aftermath of War II in Europe.
Well, what's interesting is I kind of always knew I was going to go to the war. I had visions and experiences from my first near-death experience when I was 8 years old. And I saw the battlefields of Vietnam. I saw myself in helicopters. I saw all the stuff happening. And I knew it was waiting for me. And it was interesting when I was hitchhiking around Europe, 1965, which was 21 years or so after the D-Day invasion. I ended up in this small town, Le Havre, France, and not too far from the Normandy beaches where they all had their battles. And this old couple was there. They were professors at the university there at Le Havre, whatever the university's called, I don't know. And they were there as teenagers or young adults when the invasion was happening. And they were watching it from their house or something. And they could see the explosions on the beaches and everything. And they were scared, but they were happy. They were celebrating, but also concerned for their safety. And when they finally, the GIs come up on and marching down the road in front of their house, they wanted to go out and hug them and celebrate and everything, but these guys were serious business. They were moving on and everything. And they had this bottle of wine and everything that saved for them. They wanted to celebrate, they're getting freed. And so I'm there 21 years later, and they made me their adopted American GI. I wasn't even in the military. I was still civilian. They said, no, you're going to be our token American. And they treated me to everything and treated me like a king, and brought out the old bottle of wine, and everything else. And they took me to the beaches with all the graveyards. And that's when it really hits you, when you see thousands of, grave markers, crosses or whatever they had on them. And I had a real mystical experience there. I'm standing there next to this grave, and I'm overcome. It's like I'm no longer standing there. I am instantly transported to one of the landing crafts. And I'm seeing it through this young soldier's eyes, this American, not a general, not an officer, nobody famous, just a private in this landing craft, wanting to be the hero to come and save France, and free it and do his thing. And as he's getting off this thing, and I'm experiencing it by seeing him, but I'm also experiencing it by being him. So I don't know if it was me tuning into the energy that would happen, or if this was a flashback from previous lifetime, or if this was a ghost experience or just a mystical encounter. But I felt and heard and saw everything this guy was going through as he's going to the beaches, explosions and machine gun fire and everything else. And when they open up the door, just tell me if this sounds familiar. And they open the door up, and he gets out, and he's one of the first guys out, and he gets hit. And then I just see blood in the water, and he's tumbling around. And he's got all this equipment on him, and he can't stand up, and he just drowns he never made it to shore. Those, body washed up. So I was standing there, and when it was all over, my tears were just pouring down my face. I mean, it was so real. It was a very real experience. Either there was a time warp, an attunement with past life, spiritual ghost encounter. I have no clue. All I know was when it was happening, I felt and saw everything that young soldier saw as he was in that landing craft. I mean, I felt the heart beating, and the rounds coming, and the quote unquote excitement of battle and the fear of battle, and then he never made it. So
and you still wanted to go to and get go to the army.
Well, yeah, look, here's what happened. So I finally get back to the United States on this journey. And this is 1965, and the United States got big buildup in Vietnam, and they're drafting people and everything else. So I go, I'm going to join. So I tried to join the Army. I tried to join the Marines. I tried to join the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Air Force. Everybody says I wasn't physically right, what they call 4F. Your body, you can't serve. I'm trying to serve. I say, hey, look, I'm here. I am. I had these childhood diseases and stuff, and I showed them all my stuff, and they thought I was trying to get into the military, and then try to get medical benefits or something. I don't know. So I joined the Merchant Marine, which is these ships taking supplies from San Francisco to Vietnam. And I go, okay, I pass that. And before I got on a ship to go to Vietnam, they told me, you got to go to your draft board, and they got to give you a physical, and they got to rate you before you go. So I called up the draft board, and they said, report 4:30 in the morning tomorrow in San Jose, and get on a bus, and we're going to take you to Oakland, and you're going to get a voluntary draft physical. I didn't know that's what it was. I thought I was just getting classified. So I go to the same place that I failed all the physicals at, gave them the same information, and now they go, yeah, kid, you're trying to get out of the draft. So, same doctors, same place, same information. And now they think I'm trying to pull some kind of scam. And they go, no, you're good. And next thing I know, I'm actually being drafted that day. I mean, it wasn't like just a little thing when they're going to talk. No, it was like, so I said, you can't draft me. I'm going to join. So I joined for an extra year. And I was a crew chief door gunner on a Huey helicopter. And
Yeah, I see. Did you read the interview I made with Matt Jackson?
No, I looked at two of your interviews. I don't remember which, but no, I didn't do his. But so I ended up in the Army, going to the training, showing up in Vietnam. But remember, I told you I had a near-death experience at 8 years old, and I was in the hospital for 1 year. When the first few days I was in the hospital, I died, and I had this miraculous near-death experience where I saw my life going forward for 50 years, 5 decades. I saw myself in a war with helicopters, having no ideas at 8 years old. I didn't know where Vietnam was, and I had no clue. I think it was French Indochina back then, right? I had no clue what was going on, but I knew I was in this war, and I saw myself sitting behind this machine gun on a helicopter, and I saw a lot of events that were going to happen. So I also saw afterwards in the United States who I was going to marry, my children, life, things happening. So there was absolutely no hesitation about going to Vietnam because I knew I was supposed to be there. I was in my visions, I was already there, survived, came home. So I people say, oh, you're a hero. You got all these awards. You got, all this stuff. I go, that's not being brave when you know you're protected. And it's a whole different thing.
So you arrived in October 66. How was this? What did it look like?
Well, first off, here's interesting footnote, since we're just talking military stuff here. I got orders to go. I had actually volunteered to go to Vietnam when I was in. I got through with my training. I put in a thing. I said, no, I want to go. I don't want to wait. Let's go now and get it done. Let's go. And when I got back home to the San Francisco Bay Area, I found a high school buddy, Mike Harrison, who had orders to go to the same place, same company as me at the same date leaving. And he was getting married. So I got to go to his wedding. And then we ended up going to Oakland and getting on an airplane in Travis and flying to Vietnam. So two high school buddies flying to Vietnam and not knowing if, how we're going to be when we get back in a year, right? 1 year, we're going to be on the same airplane. Are we all okay mentally, spiritually, physically? Didn't know. And that airplane ride was, we landed in Hawaii, Honolulu, because the aircraft was having mechanical problems. We stayed there for 4 or 5 hours, got back on, couldn't go anywhere. We had to hang around. We flew to Guam out in the middle of the Pacific, had problems, had to stay there about 8 hours. And then we got back on the airplane and flew to the Philippines, Clark Air Force Base. Had problems, spent a half a day there in a hot aircraft hangar, And so we're wearing the same clothes, same underwear, same shirts, same everything. And the airplane has had all these delays, and we've run out of food on the airplane and drinks and everything. It was really terrible. So then finally we're going to leave the Philippines, and we start to go to Saigon. We're approaching Saigon to land, and there's a mortar attack on the runway. So the pilots go, oh, wait, we're not landing there. And they flew all the way to Bangkok, Thailand. So, and then we were there 3 or 4 hours. By the time we got to Vietnam and unloaded, we invested almost 2 days of travel, almost 3 days. And then when we get to Saigon and we get out, they open up the airplane and we get out, the air was so hot, so muggy, and it smelled so bad. All the smells of Vietnam.
Why? What do you
Well,
mean?
one thing you had all those Americans there that because you didn't have a sewer system for all these guys. So what you do, you had these big pots that were made from 55-gallon drums, and they cut them in half, and they put those under the toilet seats, and you'd fill them up. You take them out, and you'd put diesel fuel on them or something. You set them on fire, and you burn them. So you had these pots burning all over Vietnam. I mean, a great aroma, right? So you had that going on, plus the heat, the stench of the jungle and everything else. And so it was quite a shock. And then we got out of the airplane and nobody there to greet us. We all had different, we didn't know where we were going, because we were so past the deadline to be there. Nobody even knew we were coming anymore. So we slept on the runway in the hot sun and waited for about 12 hours. Somebody finally came in a bus, picked us up and took us to a camp and sorted out the orders. It took me 3 weeks to finally get to where I was going to go.
What do you mean? So you were from camp, and what did you do on camp? How was camp life?
Well, it was a holding company, meaning people waiting to get the orders to go where they're supposed to go. My buddy and I were there. We had orders initially to go to the same place, but we were there like 3 weeks. And then they finally sent us to the wrong place. They sent us up to a place called Nha Trang, which is along the South China Sea, the coast, beautiful town, old French resort town. Got there and they go, "What are you here for?" That's where they sent me. So nobody knew what to do with us. I spent a week there. So by the time I eventually ended up traveling to where I was supposed to be, I've been wearing the same clothes, had no money. I was so beat up and tired, and I get to the company and it's like Thanksgiving Day.
But when you arrived on that journey to your camp, did you were you just in US American company, or did you talk to villagers, or did you see Australians?
No, you weren't. When you first got there, it wasn't a tour. I mean, it wasn't a vacation. It was like, you got to get going. So I arrived there on Thanksgiving, and being the new guy, brand new guy and a low ranking man, I was put on duty right away. I mean, at an hour, I just put my gear down. I was still tired. I was still wearing the same clothes. I had no place I couldn't have my laundry done anywhere because I didn't know where I was be able to pick it up. I could leave at any time, right? So I finally get there. And it was really probably one of my worst Thanksgiving days because it was just terrible. I was tired. And then when I got through doing KP, cleaning up all the food and all that stuff, and then they had me on 12-hour shift to work on helicopters till the next morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm going. So I'm exhausted. So, so that was a start. But eventually I end up getting my own aircraft and getting my wings so I could be flying every day. And my job would be to be a door gunner, and also I'm the crew chief, so I'm the mechanic. So I took my toolbox, put it underneath my seat, then I got my gun. There's a gunner on the other side. He takes care of just the maintenance on the guns. But my job was to make sure the thing could fly. And that's a lot of responsibility for a young man because there's lives on there. I mean, it's not like you're working on a car. If you mess up, it pulls over the side of the road. You call a tow truck. Well, if you don't fix the helicopter right, it's going to fall the sky into a tree or something, right? So it's like, so there's a lot of responsibility. And so I started flying about January of 66 or 67. And the first month, we lost several helicopters. A bunch of guys got killed. I attended these ceremonies where, they put the boots out there and they got the gun, in the ground with the bayonet. They got a helmet on, a flight helmet. And I mean, I go, what a heck of a way to start off. That's very, very inspiring to get in the helicopter when you keep having memorial services for people that were there before you, right? So a lot of unusual, strange, mystical things took place. It wasn't your normal, what they call tour of duty, which was 12 months. For example, I knew who was going to get shot, who was going to get killed, what helicopters were going to crash. But knowing who was going to die was a heavy trip. And then not being in charge, I'm just a listen, man. Hey, you can't take that aircraft out; it's going to crash. And of course, it does crash; it kills everybody. But there's nothing you can do about it. You can't affect change. Wasn't my destiny. I could handle me and what was happening to me, but I couldn't with everybody else. So I could give you some illustrations and stories on that. But basically, I was investigated by the military's intelligence people, and I was investigated
Why?
by the CIA because I kept making these predictions, and they kept happening. Thinking, well, how do you know this guy's going to get killed? How do you know that airplane's going to crash? What are you doing? You know, military at that time didn't believe in the Jedi warrior concept. You know, people could know things and do things.
Did you
But
listen to the enemy radio? To the pretty woman?
yeah, Hanoi Hannah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she came on. It was a good radio show. Enjoyed listening to it. We also had our own show, and we had a guy on there that everybody imitates him, but good morning, Vietnam, right? And this guy'd come on there and with crazy crap. It was just funny. But I didn't have time to really listen to that much.
But what is CP?
What is what?
CP, you said before you
KP,
get
kitchen police. That means you're washing dishes, you're cleaning pots and pans, you're KP. That's you get assigned to that.
But your mom trains you to.
Yeah, you're just working in the kitchen. So when I first got there, that was they had given off. They hired locals to do that stuff. But on Thanksgiving, which is not the Vietnamese holiday, it's an American holiday, which I tried to explain to these guys when I got there. Look, you're giving these people a day off. It ain't their holiday. You're making me work. It is my holiday. Come on. Anyway, yeah, KP. That's what KP is. It's short for kitchen police. But
And
anyway.
so you had you did hire Vietnamese people. No, I was just wondering, how was the situation? You went traveling 3 weeks before you arrived in the camp. How did you talk there to Vietnamese, or were you totally there scared?
I was naively on a journey. I'm a young guy. Nothing's going to happen to me. I traveled around Vietnam a lot, and not even without a weapon, which is foolhardy, foolish. But when you think you're invincible, you're young. It's not going to be me. It's going to be somebody else. You know. Anyway, so Vietnam. My initial impression was one of the most beautiful countries in the world. I looked at that and I said, boy, if you take away the war, take away the soldiers and all the explosions and everything, and just let this place be, this is a beautiful place. And the beaches there are beautiful. I mean, it's like the French Riviera. It's beautiful, except it's tropical. It's just really nice. So I was impressed with that. And initially, I was impressed with the Vietnamese. I found out that the South Vietnamese army, the will to win wasn't there. They've been fighting forever. There was no end in sight for them. They were kind of, it was hard for them. So I understand that. But
did you fly with them? Did you have a Vietnamese gun buddy on the helicopter?
Did I have a Vietnamese what?
Vietnamese gunner.
No, you had American gunners. American crews were American. we would give rides to South Vietnamese soldiers and take them into battle, and we take Americans into battle, and we take Australians into battle, and
Germans, did you meet Germans?
no, there was no Germans over there that I saw at the time. They may have been downtown Saigon doing something, but as far as ground troops, no. Australians had a lot. The South Koreans had a, oh, they were good. South Koreans were really, you wouldn't want to be fighting them. They were pretty brave and pretty brutal, and a force you wouldn't want to go against. The story I had when I first got there, because somebody saw it or heard about it, the South Koreans went into a village and they wanted to impress these people, because these people were like, you know, they were working with the bad guys, the Viet Cong and stuff. And so these South Koreans went there and said, "We're here now. We're not going to tolerate this." And they took one of the oxens, or you know, the water buffalo, and brought it in the middle of the village. And one of their soldiers goes, "Hi!" and just goes and pulls out the intestines, the heart or something. Just gutted this thing with his hand, and all the villagers were going. And that was just, they wanted to demonstrate that they were a force to be reckoned with. And if that was how they did business. Americans didn't do that, but that was something I heard, and I go, wow, that would scare the heck out of people. I can understand now they might cooperate. I mean, they were killing at a ratio well above anybody else there.
You said that you, as a helicopter pilot, didn't you just go from base to base? Did you do any medvac operations?
All right, here's a typical day, and actually, and when I get through saying that, there is no typical day there, but I was at the 128th Assault Helicopter Company. It was all Hueys, and we had what do we have, 20 something helicopters plus gunships. I was in what they call a slick, meaning it just had 2 machine guns. Our jobs was to carry troops, carry the wounded, carry supplies, ammo, food. People have to be transported, mail, beer, whatever, right? So we'd be working all day long. In fact, I would get up before the sun came up, and I'd go out and make sure my helicopter was mechanically working, checking all this stuff out, and then my gunner would come out and put the guns on the ship, and we'd wait for the pilots. Then the pilots would come out. They're supposed to do a pre-flight check. They're supposed to go out and check everything. They come out, they see it's Mac. Hey, Mac, you know, you're McDonald, they call you Mac. Hey, Mac, you check it out? I go, yeah, but I want you to check it out. It's my life too. Nah, you're just good enough. They get in, they just assumed I did it all. So that put a lot of pressure on me to really, really do a good job. I mean, I really want to make sure it was. So we'd take off at sunrise, and we might pick up some special forces troops and take them out to the Cambodian border, or towards Laos, or towards the Parrots Peak, you know, where the Cambodia comes into Vietnam. Or we could take a group down to the Delta. We're air mobile. We'd go anywhere. You know, we had helicopters. We'd go anywhere. So you go in the morning, you drop some troops off. Some places you dropped them, it was called a hot LZ, meaning you're going in and there's hostiles down there. They're shooting at you. There's explosions going on. You could see the tracers coming at you, and you could feel them when they hit the aircraft. Pop, you know, you get that feeling. It's like shooting a beer can. It has that same sound. It just anyway. So you'd have all that going on. So you come in there and you'd fire a couple thousand rounds coming in. You drop down for less than 30 seconds, and everybody jump off, get clear, boom, you go, circle back. Then you maybe bring in troops for an hour, and then all of a sudden there's wounded guys down there. Then you come back and you're getting shot at again, but you got to pick up the wounded guys, and they bring them in there and put them in a helicopter, and you got blood everywhere and all these bodies, and then you take off, try to get out there as fast as you can. Then you take them to a MASH unit, and or a surgical hospital someplace. And then later on that night, maybe you're bringing in more ammo, bringing in your food, bringing in some water, bringing in some more troops, or you could be coming back because they finished that area and you pick them up, you take them to another place, air mobile. So you could fight a battle here, get everybody up, go someplace else and fight another battle. So helicopter guys were always pretty much where the action was at. And in between the action, meaning, 2 or 3 minutes of sheer hell in the morning when you're firing and getting shot at, and then just routine dropping people, mail off and food off and ammunition, and then picking up medevac. So you're always doing something. I would be busy from 6:30 in the morning till 6:30, 8, maybe 9 at night. We'd just fly and every couple hours, find a place to get some fuel. And we would eat on the run. So you didn't have time to go to the bathroom, you didn't have time to eat. You had to kind of if you land someplace to fuel, you took care of everything you could take care of at that time. You only had minutes. So that was a day. Some days you might have a real beautiful run. You got to go to the ocean, like we were dropping off some Australian troops along the coast. There was a beach area and you're dropping off these Australians, with their hats with the, the side up and everything, the Australians, right? And we got to fly over the beaches, and there's some beautiful areas over there. When I first got there, there was monkeys in the trees.
You could fly that deep.
Oh, we're flying down. Sometimes we'd be right on top of the grass. I mean, if you had 2 or 3 feet of grass, we're just inches above it. And then come to a tree line and just on top of the trees.
But that January, the US stopped the herbicide spraying. Did you see a lot of kaput countryside?
Oh yeah. It was very beautiful because we'd fly along rivers and creeks and just follow them and down low, and you'd see animals because you'd sneak up on them. Tigers, monkeys, most beautiful birds you ever seen. Parrot type birds. I don't know one bird from another, but all those colorful birds. Beautiful stuff. Snakes, if you like snakes, it was a great place for snakes. There's some real good snakes there, and biggest spiders you've ever seen. I mean, spiders that their body would be the size of my hat. I mean, big spiders. I remember flying 110 miles an hour just by some telephone poles right outside the city. There were some telephone poles with the wires. And there was cobwebs, spider webs, between the wires. And I'm flying by about 100 feet in the air, and I'm looking down, and I could see a spider in the middle of that web at 100-some miles an hour. And I'm going, that's one big spider. I mean, if our power line, the wires are way apart, 10, 15 feet, right? This big web and this big spider. Anyway, centipedes, 3 feet, 2, 3 feet, huge. But it's the little guys that usually got you. It's the red ants. They would bite you and it would just really sting. I mean, that's just. I wasn't really there on a sightseeing thing, so it was like when I eventually left Vietnam. We'll go back to now and talk about it, but when I left Vietnam, there was a part of me that said, "I really want to see the waterfalls. I want to see the temples. I want to see the mountains with the monasteries in them. I want the beaches. I know they're there." So when I went back, that was 67 when I left. I went back in 2002, and I toured. I went back as a tourist. I go, this is the only way to see Vietnam. Nobody's shooting at you. you're in a car, it's air conditioned, and I got to see all that, and I actually got to meet people that I actually fought against, officers, and even some just lowly VC FEDCON. I did a luncheon, get to talk to these guys, found out what they were thinking, what they were feeling. I went back to where I got shot down. I got shot down in, hang on a second. My Purple Heart says April 14th. That was it. I had to remember. April 14th, 1967. I was shot down and wounded in this field. And I was there for a long time. I almost got captured. Eventually, some people had to come and save me because I was running around. There was 500 North Vietnamese in the area, and I melted down my machine gun. Actually, that's another whole story. I melted down my machine gun barrel. I fired about 2,000 rounds, you know.
Alone.
Like John Wayne or like Rambo or something. I thought put on the hip, and well, you know what? That's good in the movies, but in real life, it doesn't work so good because they don't tell you in the movies. Movies, the guy just goes and he goes forever, right? I tried that. The barrel gets so hot that it actually melts. It actually bends. I didn't know that because I was flying around a helicopter. I could fire all day long, but I got a rotor blade going around that's cooling it, and I'm going 100 miles an hour, and that's cooling it. So it was air cooled. When you're on the ground crashed, and you take that machine gun off and you start firing, it needs to be cooled. Anyway, long story short.
Were you there alone? Or how many?
There was me
And
and a pilot. Everybody else that got rescued and taken out. I was wounded, and this captain, he was a black officer, one of the few black helicopter pilots. He was a really good guy, nice. And we crashed. They had room for only 2 guys. They took them and another aircraft, and they left us. We'll be back. Well, they weren't back for half a day. That's a long time to be in a field with a crashed helicopter with 500 enemy in the tree line. So I took my machine gun off the helicopter and I put 2,000 and I decided I ain't gonna wait for them. I attacked them. Crazy, right? That's not the smartest thing to do. And then the captain had his .45 pistol and he stood behind me to make sure nobody stuck up. That's what he said. I think he was hiding behind me, but that's all right. But so I just fired, and it was beautiful for 2,000 rounds, and then it went click, and the gun didn't work anymore. So then we spent the rest of the day what we call E&E, escape and evasion. In other words, don't be seen, but you got to hang around the helicopter because that's where the good guys coming back to get you. That's where they're going to look for you. So you can't be too far from the helicopter. But meanwhile, the bad guys know that somebody's going to come back for you. So they're not going to kill you. They're going to leave you like bait in a rat trap, right? They're going to leave you. Somebody's going to come back and get these guys, and they could get, they could shoot down another helicopter. So it was one of those games because I think they could have took us anytime they wanted. Anyway, long story short, we survived. But something odd happened that day. We went into this landing zone, LZ, and I was the last helicopter in the sky. There was like 11 or 12 helicopters started off, and they all got shot up, and they all left. And then the gunships that were protecting them left. And we were what they call a command and control helicopter. We were up above with the commanders for these South Vietnamese troops, give them the orders. So the bad guys are coming over here. We'll move your troops. I mean, they were doing all that kind of stuff from the air. So everybody's gone, and now they need the ground troops down below. So they said, "Hey, go land." So we're landing, and there's estimated 500 enemy between the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, and every one of them was taking aim at us. And we're coming down, and I got orders because there's hand-to-hand and stuff going on down below. Don't fire your weapon because there's friendly troops and you can't tell where they're at. They didn't know where they're at. So I'm going down and I can't fire back. And everybody's shooting at us. And as you're going down to land, you got to slow up, right? And just before you land, you're going really slow and you sit down and now you're a target and it's just crazy, like Swiss cheese, the helicopter. So this South Vietnamese officer gets off my helicopter, but he was a double agent. He was actually working for the bad guys. And
how do you know that?
Well, I'll tell you how. I didn't know that until he turned around with the AK-47 fully loaded, and took aim at me, and all I saw was fire coming at me, light. And it hit me. I just had this brand new, I've had it 3 days, a ceramic chest protector. Before that, I just had what they call flak vest, real lightweight, wouldn't stop a bullet, doesn't even stop flak. You just sweat in it. But they said, hey, Mac, nobody wants to try this out. You want to try it out? And I'm going, because it was like 20 pounds in the front, 20 pounds in the back, So we said, yeah, okay. I figured I'm offered something. There's a reason for it. Maybe it's good fortune. So I had my third day wearing this thing, and me and my door gunner decided to take off the back ceramic plate because we got our backs against the metal wall. We figured, what's the chance of getting shot in the back, right? So we took that and we put it under our seat because we are sitting in a nylon seat, basically like canvas. And so we're sitting there and rounds are coming up. And so we got more danger from a round coming up in us in the spine or elsewhere. So we put him underneath there. So anyway, so on this day, the guy gets out, he takes aim, and he empties an 18-round clip right at me. I feel my body going boom against the wall of the helicopter. There's a transmission behind me, and then the other side, there's another wall, and the gunner's on the other side facing. We're one on one side, one on the other side, exactly the same position, facing outward. So just opposite. So this guy fires. This one round hits me right square in the heart, blows this ceramic vest up. There's pieces flying in my face and everything else. Fire coming out of there. There must have been a tracer round. But there's fire coming out. I see little flames coming up in my chest, right? I go, well, that ain't good. And there's a big hole, right? And it felt like somebody a horse had kicked me. It was like, boom. I mean, the chest was sore. Even with that vest on there, you could feel the impact because the guy was only like 10 feet away, firing out of it.
This?
I mean, just boom. Anyway, so there I am. And so we go maybe a soccer field away. That's all, but the length of a soccer field. And we made a unscheduled landing in the middle of this field, And the gunner on the other side, when I got out, I got the pilots out. And one on the other side, he slumped over his gun. He's got 17 holes in him. There's 17 exit holes in the metal behind him, which was really crazy. Here's the crazy part. Because on my side, there was no entry holes. The bullets all came here. One hit me, and the rest disappeared. But 17 of those rounds ended up coming out the wall on the other side of the helicopter, and there's a transmission, big metal transmission in there. Somehow bypass that, it comes out. So they got 17 exit holes on the other side, no entry holes on my side where the rounds came from. And he's sitting there and he's wounded, but he recovered, believe it or not. He had a lot of blood. And so I take him and I throw him on my shoulder. He's about 150, 60 pounds. I was about 150 pounds. And I'm running at a full run with him on my shoulder to get away from the helicopter. And then a gunship came in, a small Huey. It could only hold, it couldn't even hold those two guys. It took the wounded gunner and it took the commanding officer. And he left me, and I'm wounded in the hand. And they left us. We got a room. And I'm going, really? Really? You can't throw something out? Really? So anyway, so we were left, and the rest is history. I ended up shooting up the other guys and doing all kinds. I got put in for a Silver Star that day, but I ended up getting a Distinguished Flying Cross and a Purple Heart that day. And anyway, get back.
No, but how?
Yeah, it's just stories. So we get back to the base. They go back and they lift out the helicopter and they bring it back. And then all of a sudden I end up with about 200 people looking at this helicopter like, well, how can you have exit holes and no entry holes, right? And then they all look at my vest with the big one hole in it. So they sent some people out to investigate that. They were trying to figure out how that happened. what's interesting was that was April 14th, 1967. And in 2013, 12, 10, I don't know, 14, someplace in the early 2000s, I got a telephone call and my phone identified it as coming from Langley, Virginia. Well, for Americans, they know that address. That's where the CIA is headquartered. So apparently they had a file on me and they called me up and I go, how'd you guys get a hold of me? I said, well, we know where you're at. We've been watching you. I go, really? Okay. And they had a dossier and a file on that and all my predictions about helicopter crashes. And they had records of all the weird, crazy stuff that happened to me over there. And they were trying to figure out how to duplicate that electronically, or if I could teach them. I said, look,
Wow.
I go, well, we got a $20 million budget. You know, if you could do something, we could do it electronically. They said, yeah, good luck on that. I said, are you meditating? Are you raising your Kundalini energy? Are you into yoga? No. Okay, great. But I'll show you how, but I guarantee you, it's anyway. So that was my experience with the CIA. And that's when I found out about Jedi Warrior Project, which is not its real name. That's just what they call it jokingly, quote unquote, jokingly. They've investigated guys like myself that had some mystical experiences and supernatural stuff happen there. And even though it looked like they were making fun of you and they never said nothing to you, but they followed you. Later on, they recruited people into a program at Stanford University with the CIA, remote viewers, where they were doing this remote viewing. These military guys would go and they could find a crashed aircraft or locate something. Just it's another whole process. And they were also putting together small groups of what they called, not official now, Jedi warriors, where they were taking these psychic warriors, utilizing their skills plus military skills, and trying to create small units for intelligence gathering and use them for future wars. Now, where that's at, nobody would tell me. If it's really actually a program, nobody's talking other than gossip in CIA. This guy was telling me the gossip. Oh, well, I can't. He says I can't talk about it. You know, yeah, okay, great. But apparently, I wasn't the only one they were studying, and there's more to that story. Someday we'll find out. I tried to order the records, and the guy told me, he says, it's your file, but the only thing you're going to get is your name, rank, and serial number. Everything else is going to be blacked out. I said, well, it's my file based on my interviews. Yeah, but we can't tell you what's in it. I go, what? It's like, what? It's me. It's based on my testimony. What's the deal, right? So they didn't want to release that stuff. Anyway, so.
But why, you didn't work for the government after your military release. When did you find out about this Jedi warriors?
I found out about that when they contacted me. And other than that, I thought I was just still being investigated and laughed at, and because they didn't own up to anything I did. Like, yeah, come on, you're crazy, or you've done something. And then
What year was this?
When they contacted me?
Yeah.
2012, 13, 14, someplace in there, maybe 10. So anyway, it is what it is. But Vietnam had so much stuff going on. Probably I got crazy awards and decorations for being, quote, a hero. But the one thing I did that I felt was the most heroic thing I did, the bravest thing I ever did, I got nothing, and faced a possible court-martial. And an incident involved me disobeying direct orders and getting my gunner to disobey the same orders. We were flying over the Ho Chi Minh Trail area. There was a little hamlet, little village, and it was in what they call a free fire zone, meaning there's only bad guys down there. If you see somebody, you don't need permission to fire. If you think they're the enemy, you get to shoot at them. And that sounds strange until you know there's other areas in Nam you couldn't fire. Somebody shot at you in a helicopter, right? You'd have to get on your radio and call Saigon. and you get somebody in Saigon and go, we got a guy firing at us, and here he is, and he's firing at us. Can we fire back? Well, just a minute, we got to check, see where our troops are at. It could be 5 minutes later. Well, that's a lifetime. I mean, come on. So then
And
that
did
place,
that areas change all the time?
yeah, it changed. So if we had troops in the area, you couldn't fire because you didn't know where they're at. I understood the concept, but the guy's making a decision in an office in Saigon. You're sitting in a helicopter actually getting shot at, and you're making up their mind whether you can shoot back or not. It's like, really? I mean, we got to go through this anyway. So we're flying over this area, and this new major just got to Vietnam. He's looking down and he sees what appears to be enemy troops marching down this dirt road from his village. It looks like they got weapons on their shoulder. They're all wearing black pajamas, and there's somebody in the front has black outfit too. And he goes, McDonald, get on your gun, shoot those guys. Now I got a M60 machine gun. It fires a NATO round, 7.62 millimeter. It's a big bullet. 750 rounds a minute. In 1 minute, you can fire 750 rounds. I mean, good grief, you're going to hit something, right? So if you blasted for a minute, you do a lot of damage. So the guy wants me to fire my machine gun at this group of people, and I don't fire. First off, I got memories from, remember when I had that near-death experience, sitting behind that machine gun and going through the same event. I'm going, no, that's not what it looks like, sir. I refuse to fire. And he gave me a direct order, says, you'll fire. I'm getting a direct order, failure to do so, and have you court-martialed. I said, do whatever you're going to do. So then he asked the other gunner to do it. And he says, well, I've been with McDonald's long enough to know that if he says it ain't right, I go with his feelings. I ain't firing either. So then this major goes, I'm bringing you both up on charges of mutiny, which is a death penalty or life in jail. That's it. And we're both like 20, 21 years old, right? I would still be in jail today. Okay. So we both go, no, which is amazing that this guy would follow my directions. So I'm giving a direct order. I'd be in no trouble. He's the one that's telling me to do it through the court martial. And yet there's a higher sense of not following orders. In other words, just because somebody tells you to do something doesn't mean that's what you do. You have to follow your spiritual intentions. And it felt wrong, didn't feel right. So I finally told him, I said, well, you can do whatever you want to do to us. Why don't you fly down, make a pass? If it's the bad guys, they're going to shoot at us and I'll shoot back. So that was the compromise. So he swoops down, we get down there, and just we're right over him. It's a whole bunch of children coming from the little village. They were going to a community vegetable garden, and they had rakes and shovels and picks and all those things used for garden work. And the guy in the front was a Catholic priest in black, with the robe and everything. I'm thinking, think about the bad karma there. That would have been not a good thing. So I kept quiet about it for 20 years or so. I actually started telling the story about it, but nobody was offering me any medals. Quiet, not even an attaboy, not even buying you a beer, nothing. Just don't ever say anything, right? We're not going to charge you with anything. Well, I said, it's very generous of you. You're not going to charge me. Right? You realize how damaged that pilot's life would have been? And Mike Dorgunner and me and the other guys, and then all those children, all their parents, all their grandparents, all the friends and people in the village, that would have been a terrible, awful consequences that would have been huge. It would have affected hundreds of people, would have been affected by that negatively. So I have this rule, and I try to teach new veterans this. You have a loyalty and duty to your country, but you have a higher loyalty, and that's to what's right. So disobeying direct orders sometimes is the correct thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And it comes at great risk. They don't make you a hero. They're not happy with it. And they're certainly not jump up and down when I go talk to a group of new veterans, at a military base or something, and I'm telling them this story. They don't like me to tell the story because I'm telling these guys, you follow the orders that are correct and right, but you don't follow those that are wrong. End of story. That's not something the military wants to generate as a message. But I think it's a necessary message. Germany's learned from it. And we should have learned from Germany. Just following orders doesn't cut it. You're still a human being. But there's consequences for not following orders. Trust me, there was. Anyway, so
How did you see your colleagues disobey and they were being locked into military hospital, military jail, or?
well, I'll tell you what, the pilot came back and he didn't tell anybody. The other pilot didn't tell anybody. I mean, my gunner didn't tell anybody. It's like, what's the point? I mean, nobody wants to say, hey, I was going to be court-martialed. I was going to be in jail. Think about that. And you picture yourself at 21 years old. And now you're going to be 80 years old or 90. And you never had a free day after your 21st birthday. You were like in jail the rest of your life, or shot, firing squad. I mean, they don't fool around. The military don't fool around. That's one of the worst things you could do. You could kill a guy in the military and do 7 years in jail. Seriously, you get away as little as 7 years in jail for killing him, for somebody. But for disobeying an order, you could be in jail the rest of your life. And in combat, you could get firing squad for it. So that shows you how much emphasis is put on obeying orders.
So, did you get all your medals on one day?
No, in fact, I still got medals I'm waiting for. In 2014, I think it was 2014, which was 40 something years after I left Vietnam, I finally got a Bronze Star medal awarded to me, and it was at the state capital of California, Sacramento, and I had congressmen and people come out, and there was a band. It was really kind of neat because I finally got a medal that was 40 something years late, but I still got, I got one Purple Heart. I got a second Purple Heart that never got awarded. Nobody wrote it up. It's impossible. So I'm missing a Purple Heart. I'm missing a Silver Star. I'm still waiting for some other air medals. When I left Vietnam, I didn't worry about paperwork. I said, no, I'm out of here.
The bronze, but the Bronze Star. Were you aware about this, or did somebody remember? And
paperwork, yeah, I made an inquiry, and then somebody found the paperwork, and then finally it happened. It was kind of nice because my grandchildren were there, and they got to see me getting awarded. It was kind of cool, but that's a long wait, and I've kind of given up on the other ones. But I get to get a Distinguished Flying Cross, which for an enlisted man, for crew chief, that's a big deal. That's hard to get. That's a big deal. And I got 14 air medals. I should have had 20, but the paperwork, I go, I don't care. I'm out of here. And got a Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry, which a lot of veterans, our units got them, so that was easy. And
but what did you get the Silver Star for?
Well, the Silver Star I didn't get. I got nominated, but I never got it. Never saw the light of day. See, people will come and they go, well, I did some things in the war, and you go, well, you got no medals. I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of people out there that have done a lot of things. It takes an officer to witness it. It takes an officer to follow up on the paperwork, and his boss to follow up on the paperwork. If nobody follows up, they're all lazy or something. It gets lost, or the guy leaves. So I'm lucky to get what I got. There's some of them hanging on the wall here. There's some in boxes and drawers and stuff, but it's not medals. It's memories and the people that you were with and doing your duty. Again, loyalty and duty to God first, then your country, family, your team, you're rooting for Liverpool, or whatever. You're rooting for your favorite soccer team. But loyalty has to start first with the essence of who we are and who we believe we are, God. If you're not loyal to mankind, to God, the creation, if you're not loyal to that, then your life is not going to turn out as good as it does. So even in the heat of battle, one should always pray for their enemy. Don't get angry at me. You're not angry at them. They're just soldiers doing what you're doing. They're just wearing a different uniform. They're being loyal to their country. I can accept that. I can't accept soldiers doing terrible things like killing men, women, and children on either side. And what's interesting is all the people I've been working with PTSD. I've been doing this for about 40 years. We didn't call it PTSD way back, but the Vietnam vet has their issues. They get depressed, there's things going on. These new veterans from the Afghan war, the Iraqi war, they did so many tours. They did 6 months, a year, and then they come back again, and they come back again. These guys really had a lot of stress. They didn't see as much action. They didn't see, they weren't killing people. It's minimal action. I mean, you think 20 years, how many guys are really in the action? But it's the threat of the possibility every single moment you're there. That's the stress that gets them. You're driving down a road, nothing may happen. You drive down the road 300 times, nothing ever happens. But every time you drive down there, every minute you're thinking, well, maybe there's a bomb in the road, So that's the kind of guys I'm kind of working with. And the other guys I'm working with, which a lot of military guys don't understand them, is the drone pilots. Because they're sitting in some air-conditioned room someplace, 1,000 miles away or whatever, and they're working a computer game, basically. And, yep, okay, you got orders. Yep, fire, boom. They blew up a car, and then they find out later on that the car had the guy's family in it, his kids, along with the bad guy, right? So even though they're not in the battle, they're a participant at the most lethal, deadly place, making life or death decisions. And I think these people deserve a lot more of my attention and time because nobody's really developed anything to really help them. And even fellow veterans, you're in office, I was out in the battlefield. No, that's a heavy thing. Those decisions are heavy. I mean, you can think about that. Sniper has kind of the same thing. Sniper's up there, he's giving orders. There's the guy looks like when he comes, shoot the guy or whatever. And they're totally trusting on intelligence that they got. But after you shoot a few guys and you begin to wonder how good the intelligence was, or you just shoot a few guys and you go, wow, life or death. And you see the guy in the telescope, life or death is in your hands. That's hard on them as human beings. They have to change their personality to be able to keep doing that. And there's some guys that have been very efficient at it. That takes a certain skill level, but also takes a certain human level. We need them, bless them, but they also need our help afterwards. They really need to be reprogrammed, and they need a hug. I mean, that's a terrible job. It's like being a bomber flying over and you drop all these bombs. It blew up a house. That wasn't a factory. Collateral damage is huge. They keep saying there's smart bombs and we got intelligence so we can, no, there's always collateral collateral damage. There's always somebody getting hurt. That's not a military participant. So war is what it is, so you try to minimize that. I took my stand when I felt that was the right thing to do. And I'm not too sure that, honestly, I'm not too sure many people would do that. As soon as they're threatened with going to jail or getting shot, firing squad, most people say, okay, great, okay, it's on you. But my door gunner, who listened, he took great risks just in his belief in me. He deserved a medal, not me. He deserved a medal. I mean, that was really trusting. So anyway, that's it. So I was in Nam a year.
Did you go, did you get sent home in between?
Well, what happened was I still had a year to go when I left. And I went to Fort Benning, Georgia. And so I did my last year there. And, but it was like, I probably should have got out then. It was kind of anticlimactic. It was like, what a waste. But they didn't want to send me, they didn't want to send people for another tour in that short period of time. You could have volunteered. I could have volunteered. They offered me, quote unquote, anywhere you want to go in the world, we'll give you free transportation and 30 days free vacation. Well, that's great. I got to spend a year more in Nam. So I'm trading the possibility I'm going to lose my life for a free vacation. I go, no, that's not. I mean, I've escaped this. This is close enough.
Was that after you got shot?
Yeah, I had an opportunity. They kept asking for volunteers, and I mean, I could have been there. And if I would have stayed, I would have hit the 10 offensive and all that action and everything. And I'm thinking, no, I made the right decision. There's a part of me that kind of thought, I'm leaving my buddies, but then I'm thinking, God protect you for 12 months. Don't push your luck. Get out of there. Because my last combat mission, I had 3 days left in Vietnam, and they actually had me on orders to go on a combat mission in my helicopter. I would go, what? I got 3 days left. Come on. So I didn't feel good about it. I felt very uneasy about it. And I went out and checked my helicopter out. There's nothing wrong. We get in it. We're going about 80, 90 miles an hour, just going down the runway to take off from the base camp. And we only got maybe 100 feet of runway left. And then there's the jungle. And all of a sudden, big explosion. Oh, engine blows up. Fire all over the place. This aircraft's on fire, explodes. We're going about 80 miles an hour, but we're only about 3 feet off the ground. We just dropped down and skid all the way into the runway. They turn it off. I get out, I grab the fire extinguisher, and I get everybody out, and I put out the fire, and I'm still fighting the fire, and the fire trucks come to see. Fire trucks. Now, had that explosion of the engine happened 10 seconds later, we've been on top of trees. We've crashed on the top of a jungle, and it would have twisted, turned, it would have killed us. So just with a matter of seconds. And I go, this is I ain't getting back on the helicopter again until I'm leaving. I threw the fire extinguisher down, it was empty, and I walked all the way back to my barracks. I said, that's it, I quit. I'm going home in 3 days. That's it, I quit. Anyway, so then I got on the airplane, and there sitting in the airplane is my buddy from high school. He was at a different base camp, and we met on the last day. Got an airplane together. We didn't say much. It was a real quiet flight back. Didn't know what to say. Talked for about 20 minutes, and then we got back home. So there you go. So that was it. There was a lot more involved in that, and everything else, and a lot more detailed stuff. But Vietnam, it was a betrayal. It kind of like Afghanistan. And when we pulled out of Afghanistan this summer, a lot of my veterans were really feeling it. They were remembering how we left Vietnam. Never lost a battle, never really lost the war, but at the end, the bad guys got it. They won without having to win any battles against us. They found out that they could outlast us America doesn't want to spend 20 years in a war. And who could blame us? I mean, we can't change governments, we can't change people. What happens is when it's over, like right now, the war's over, where's the outreach for veterans? Are they helping any of these guys? I mean, there's token, but there's a lot of hurting going on. It's like the war's over, we don't need you anymore. Vietnam's over, we don't need you anymore. The only war they really took care of people in America, I don't know about the rest of the world, was World War II. When those guys came home, they treated every guy like a hero, whether he was in battle or not. They got all kinds of benefits. They were able to buy houses. They were able to go to colleges. Not anymore. There's not enough. You don't get enough to do any of that, really. So
there's people who compare Afghanistan to Vietnam.
yep, absolutely. Because it's a guerrilla war. It's the same people fighting on both sides. I mean, you can't tell one from the other, unless they shoot at you. Oh, that's a bad guy, right? You can't tell one from the other. The same thing we had in Vietnam. These people could be coming to your base where you're at, and these people could be washing your clothes or cooking in the kitchen and doing all kinds of things, and they pay them and they leave at night. Those same people could be attacking you that night. You didn't know. I was like, it's crazy. It's like, who? So veterans couldn't tell who the good guys, the bad guys were, and that's what caused a lot of problems. So it was a civil war, just like Afghanistan. It's a war among itself. There are some outside influences, but basically it's a warring. It's always been a warring nation. It's tribal, one city, one tribe against another family, another tribe. It's always been divided. The British could tried 3 times to rule it and conquer it, and they failed. Americans, the Russians, who else was there? Genghis Khan walked through it, didn't stay. Alexander the Great says, "Nah, we ain't taking this place. We're moving out."
The Russians.
Yeah, everybody's lost in Afghanistan. You can't beat a country with a rank. There's a ragtag army. Everybody's against you. It's like, who do you fight? So
What did they teach you anything while training about Vietnam?
when I went to Vietnam, other than me reading on my own and studying on my own, military most veterans didn't even know where Vietnam was at. They had no clue of the history. They knew a little about the French were there, and that's about all they knew. They didn't know about the World War II history and the Japanese coming in and the French coming in and all the stuff the French did, and the whole scope of the war. They saw it black and white. It's communists against non-communists. Well, there was a lot more involved in that, and it's a shame, but it was a generation of veterans that got used, abused, and ignored. So that's kind of where we're at. So worldwide, good.
Did you feel the last, say, after your ended your military career, did you have to tell everybody stories about Vietnam or the last years by I don't know, by young veteran groups? Are they all
Here's what happened.
collaborating?
Vietnam vets came back, and most of us just kept our mouth closed. Nobody wanted to hear our war stories. Nobody wanted to know about the war. And so a lot of us never even told people we were veterans. And it wasn't until the Gulf War that Vietnam vets go, you know what? We're going to help these new guys going over for the Gulf War, against Iraq. And we helped support those guys, and we welcomed them home, and we took care of them because we understood what battle was about. And my son was in that war. He was in the Gulf War, helicopters. But that was a quick, easy, down, done, boom, get out of there. we messed it up when we tried to rebuild the country and take it later on, you know. It's nothing is better for us having fought there. Nothing. Iraq's a mess. Syria's a mess. Iran's a mess. Afghanistan's a mess. All of that area, it's not going to be fixed by shooting people. And it's especially shooting people when you don't even live, you're not even a resident of the country. I mean, other than oil coming out of there, what was in it for the United States? So take away the oil, would have we had wars in Afghanistan? If it was to save the people, well, we got 100 wars going on in Africa. We never go in there and help them guys, right? But the Arabs, they got the oil. Well, we got to help these. We got to help Saudi Arabia protect them, and we got to help Kuwait. And it's always been about the money, the resources.
But
Why
you,
we were in Afghanistan, I don't understand, because there was not much there other than opium. So,
the red poppy. Yeah, the opium.
it was growing more now since when we went in there, the so-called bad guys were getting rid of it. And then we allowed it to be cultivated there as a revenue source, I guess, for those people. Those opium fields are being torn down and burned down, and they get rid of that stuff again, which is really weird. That's what we should have been doing. We were the good guys, right? Anyway.
And no, but the last years and before Afghanistan, did you get asked a lot about Vietnam?
There's not much curiosity about Vietnam. We still got anti-Vietnam War people out there who, when the war was over and quote unquote we lost, it was, I told you so. I'm a good guy. I didn't go. You guys went. You were wrong. Yeah. So we've got enough of that. So we're not in that game anymore. It's like, hey, look, if you want to feel that way, that's up to you. We as a brotherhood, we stick together. We welcome each other home. We understand each other. And the rest of the world, it is what it is. We don't have to win anybody over. We know what we did. And for the most part, we really did the right things for the right reasons. It just didn't turn out that way at the end. It was a waste. I mean, we could have saved a lot of American lives by never have done that. It would have been the same result in the end, except less casualties on both sides. So, but the politicians always want to wave the flag. They always want to go to war. And then you look at them and go, how many of you guys are veterans? Like our politicians. Yeah. Trump never wore a uniform. Clinton didn't wear a uniform. None of those guys wore uniforms. John F. Kennedy did, you know. He was a World War II guy, Eisenhower. But these new guys, nah. So you got politicians making decisions, old men making decisions that affect the lives of young men. And they got no stake in the game. They got no risk. But everybody's making money.
Were you informed always about the news of McNamara's decisions?
Yeah, McNamara sold us out. McNamara was actually, when we were doing bombings on North Vietnam, he actually gave the Swiss government the information the day before on what targets were going to be, so the North Vietnamese could move their civilians out of the way. What the North Vietnamese did was put their SAM missiles there. Now, talk about traitors. You're asking your soldiers, your pilots and stuff to go over here and do something, and your government's telling the enemy where you're going to be. Not too good.
You left October in October 67. In October, and there were lots of CV missions, VC missions. No.
What about the VC? The Viet Cong, the VC, Victor Charlie, we'd call him, the enemy.
Yeah. Were you involved in Operation Atlanta or Operation Chandelure?
Nope, none of those. I was in Operation Cedar Falls, Operation Attleboro. All those are big ones. I was in all the biggest operations of the war. I was supporting the 1st Infantry Division, the 25th, and the Aussies, and a bunch of other ones. Cedar Falls, Attleboro, Billings, Operation Billings was a big one. A lot of stuff. I was in one operation that started the operation, and there was like 700 helicopters on this. I was helicopter number 4 going into this landing zone. All the rest of them were coming miles behind me, right? You bring in 10, 12, then boom, and then another group, and then another group, right? So I come in there, and we had a jet, Air Force jet, was coming down, putting bombs down there. And just as we were coming in, just finishing up. But just as we were coming in, I see him coming right past us straight. And he kept going straight right into the ground. So I'm landing at the same time this Air Force jet is blowing up, a couple hundred yards away. It's like, whoa, So there was some real anti-aircraft stuff they had in a bunker, cement bunker there that was shooting them down. So I thought that, I go, wow, had the jet not been there, he had no trouble shooting the helicopters. I mean, we're going a lot slower. So, yeah. So it was what it was. No shame, no blame. I'm proud. I'd do it again. I certainly would do it for my brothers. I'd be there for them.
Can you tell me something about, is there lots of tell me something about the operation role.
Whatever operation you had, they basically, everything was an operation, the big ones, right? And it was basically, where are you going to land the troops? Why are you going in there? Usually there was some underground bunkers, forts. One place we went in, there was a 4-story deep down, four levels down hospital and administrative center, and troops underground. There was all these troops underground. It was like
of the U.S.
for the Vietnamese. That was the North Vietnamese. Bad guys were down in these things here. So we would get some information. We'd try to bomb it. You can't bomb those things underground. You got to go in on the ground, send troops in. Eventually, you got to send people down inside there, the tunnel rats. That's not a job I ever wanted. So, yeah, it doesn't matter. Some of the ones with small names or no names were the worst. I bet in LZs, I can't even remember there was an operation number at all or name. And it was hand-to-hand combat going on. People dying right next to you. You're landing and people trying to get on a helicopter and people dropping, and yeah, some bad stuff. But it was what it was. And you have to live with that. And if you're adding any value to this world, you take the lessons that you've learned and you try to teach the young. And so that's what I try to do. I let people know, you have a conscience. Do the right thing always. Doesn't matter what your government does. You do the right thing. but there are consequences. Be prepared. There are consequences. I like to talk about the supernatural, the mystical, the spiritual events that happen there, because I think that's important. People see that, but it's
But what supernatural did happen?
well, I was telling you, I know who was going to get shot, who's going to get killed. I was protected. A lot of neat things happened. I do have a book out there that talks about this, Warrior Spiritual Odyssey, that they can get on Amazon, which is being translated into German and Spanish. So they'll be able to, if they're watching this and if they happen to be in Germany, well, you wait a couple months, 2 or 3 months, you'll be able to get it on Amazon Germany as a download or as a hardcover or a paperback, I guess. So, well, thank you for having me on. Warriors worldwide, they're a brotherhood and a sisterhood now. We got to include women because there's real good warrior women out there. It's a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And no matter what side or what army or Navy or Air Force you're fighting with or for, it's always about duty. It's always about putting your country and your loved ones ahead of yourself and your own comfort. And people that are willing to sacrifice their own comfort and their own safety for the greater good, I salute them. They are my brother and my sister. Because you can truly be a spiritual person and still be a warrior. There's no separation. So, love your enemy, even if you have to go to war with them. Don't hate them. And we're losing 1,000 people a day on this COVID. So be careful when you travel. Get your shots, get your booster, cut your risks.
Okay.
I'll be in Germany sometime in the future, helping promote my books. I'll have 3 books in German by the end of next year, hopefully. And then my books will go into Spanish. And I'm not sure about Portuguese or French. I'm not sure which languages after that, but there's a worldwide interest right now in the paranormal, the spiritual, and what part spiritual warriors have to do with all that. They're not separate things. You can be spiritual, even saintly, and still be a warrior. And I hope that my life can demonstrate that as a fact. Read my books, you'll find out. I got a website. If people want to go to my website, www.Rev, R-E-V, BillMcDonald.com.